Georgia Republicans have recently conducted a purge of black election board members in 6 different county boards. So now this is all across the state, and they have been reorganized in order to give Republicans power over elections. So now, recently, this had happened as a result of a Republican piece of legislation that allowed the Republican Party to expand its power over choosing members of local election boards ahead of the 2020 midterms. So, and how they did this, well, they used some pretty shady means, as Reuters explains. The unusual rash of restructurings follows the state's passage of Senate Bill 202, which restricted ballot access statewide and allowed the Republican-controlled state election board to assume control of county boards it deems to be underperforming. Interesting. So, yeah. Oh man, these counties, these are underperforming. Gee, I wonder which counties are referring to. Could it be counties that have black elections boards? And black counties that went to Joe Biden during the 2020 election? Maybe. So now, the Georgia restructurings, they explain. Oh, I'm sorry. Once in place, the board immediately launched a performance review of the Democratic-leading Fulton County Board, which oversees part of Atlanta, and replaced the majority black election board members with white Republicans. Georgia restructurings are part of a national Republican effort to expand control over election administration in the wake of Trump's false voter fraud claims. Republican-led states, such as Florida, Texas, and Arizona, have enacted new curbs on voter access this year. Backers of Trump's false stolen election claims are running campaigns for Secretary of State, the top election official in battleground states, and some Republicans in Wisconsin are seeking to eliminate the state's bipartisan election commission and threatening its members with prosecution. And so that's going on all over the state while this is going on in Georgia. So make no mistake, this is a right-wing takeover in order to try to end democracy, at least when it comes to black people. They are targeting the backbone of the Democratic Party, black voters. And of course, they're doing it because, for one, they can. and secondly, because Georgia had the audacity to put a Democrat in the White House and give them the Senate. So Georgia Republicans are like, no, we're not going to let that happen again. We're going to take over these boards. So now it's really important what these boards actually do. Let me get to those details. But first, here are the stakes, right? So now in 2022, Senator Raphael Warnock is up for re-election. That's going to be decided in Georgia. And of course, if Donald Trump runs in 2024, Georgia went to Biden election, it may very well now go to Donald Trump in 2024. And you also have a governor's race. You have Republican Brian Kemp, who's the incumbent, running against David Perdue in the primary. David Perdue, even more extreme than Brian Kemp. And whoever wins that ends up going against Stacey Abrams. So now let me give you more details into this, okay? So now the law has led to the restructuring of 5 different county boards. These are the counties of Troup, Morgan, Pickens, Stevens, and Lincoln, in which the legislature had shifted power to appoint some or all election board members to local county commissioners. All of those county commissioners are controlled by Republicans, of course. Now, previously, the appointments had been split evenly between the local Democratic and Republican parties, sometimes with other local entities holding other appointments. Sometimes they're bipartisan, sometimes they're nonpartisan. And so that old system was actually supposed to ensure that it was politically balanced, or at least nonpartisan, so that they can go and make these rules, right? Now, unfortunately, Republicans didn't like that because, well, sometimes they lose. And not all the time, by the way. Sometimes Democrats lose under that system. But the Republicans looked at this and decided, no, unacceptable. We're just going to make it, we're just going to rig the rules so that we never, ever lose again. And that's fascism. That when they lose, they usurp power. We have never seen that happen before when it comes to Democrats. And again, this is despite the Republicans always accusing the other party of being libertarians and shoving things down their throats. Oh, yeah. No, it's all projection. And that's what it's always been. No, so now that's 5 counties. There were actually changes in 6 counties. So in the 6 counties, Spalding, parties still choose the 2 members each. Now, they're kind of going with the old system, but with one big change. The 5th member will now be chosen by local judges. So it used to be, and we see this system, it's just to show you how weird and old some of this stuff is. It was actually decided by a coin toss. I know, it's very strange, right? Instead of a coin toss, now it's local judges. The only problem is, of course, these judges are politically conservative. And guess what they did? They appointed a white Republican to replace a black Democrat on the election board, giving Republicans a 3-2 majority. And of course, again, at least the coin flip system was random. Like, oh, sometimes you get a Republican, sometimes you get a Democrat. In this case, they're like, no, we're just going to not leave anything to chance. We're just going to appoint a Republican. And that's it. Sad for you, we are now taking control. And they can do whatever they want since they have that majority. In Morgan County, for example, the majority Republican County Commission reconstituted its election board, ousting 2 outspoken black Democrats. In Troup County, a black Democratic member claims the board shakeup was aimed at ousting her after she had fought to increase voting access. Now, Reuters, to be fair, could not determine the exact split of Democrats and Republicans in the 5 counties that handed control of the county commissioners before and after the restructurings, and that's because party affiliation is not public information in Georgia. The board representatives declined to identify their allegiances. But how this will have an impact on the midterm elections and future presidential elections, well, that's important. See, the county election boards have broad authority over voter access, polling locations, early voting procedures, and have considerable sway over post-election provisional ballot tallies, audits, and recounts. So the reconstituted boards in 2 of the 6 counties have already moved to restrict voting access very, very quickly. And in addition to Spalding's termination of Sunday voting, that's another thing, by the way, souls to the polls. You might have heard that before. Sunday voting is a way where, African Americans or basically anybody, churches, for example, they'll do souls to the polls. They'll, get people together and they'll go to the voting booth. Now, that's a huge staple in African American community, right? Now, you would think the Republicans wouldn't have a problem with that. Like, we do all this stuff in church. We tell people how to vote all the time, and all that stuff. Well, here's the thing, right? So, what Republicans do on that generally could be considered to be, oh, you're doing pay to play, right? As far as like, you are using your religious identity, you're using your church, whatever, get in politics, and therefore you should pay your taxes, right? Now, what's different about this for black communities is that you have these black communities that just do organizing and say, look, we don't care who you vote for. We're just going to help you get to the polls. We're going to give you access to the polls, right? Whereas the conservative churches don't actually do that because they don't necessarily need to. Everybody generally has access to the polls already. Living in white neighborhoods, there's normally no giant lines, no voter suppression in those areas, et cetera, et cetera. And so there is that big difference there. Okay. Now, the other thing too is we don't have a national voting holiday in this country. It's on a work day. So that's already a gigantic roadblock for people who want to go and vote. Like, I don't know. I don't get the day off. I can't afford to miss a day of work, or my boss won't let me go. And so what am I going to do? I guess I'm just not going to vote. Sunday voting was there to try to, do something. Like, hey, we do want to expand the franchise. We do want more people to vote. So let's give them something. Let's allow them to at least vote on Sunday. No, not anymore. Not in Spalding County. Not going to happen. By the way, Lincoln County also proposed consolidating 7 precincts into 1. So doing, again, gerrymandering, right? That would, of course, critics say that would discourage voting by people traveling in from remote areas, which could, by the way, also hurt conservative voters who tend to live in more rural areas. So, I mean, and by the way, in that same county, the new law also removes appointments by political parties and gives the Republican-led county commission discretion to appoint the board's 3-member majority. County Republicans say the changes are meant to comply with the 2018 state Supreme Court ruling, which dictates that private entities cannot appoint members to government bodies. However, that decision only involves Board of Ethics, not elections, and many other Georgia counties continue to allow political party appointments to the election boards. Back in Spalding, the board's new chair is a Republican named Ben Johnson. Social media, just to show you who they're appointing to the boards and why it matters so much, because it's not just normal Republicans. Here you have a guy whose social media is filled with posts endorsing Trump's big lie, that the election was rigged, that the election was stolen. In fact, Johnson actually refused to even answer questions about whether he thinks Biden is the actual president. So, yeah. That's who's running the county's elections now. Understand that this is a power grab. It is. Again, once these black Democrats are in the minority when it comes to these boards, which we've seen, Republicans, they're going to ram through whatever change they want. And these changes always end up disenfranchising certain voters. And also, if they don't like the way the elections go, well, they now will also have the power to attempt to overturn them. So it's even worse. Everybody, this is what fascism looks like. This is a takeover. While cable news is out to lunch talking about Biden, Harris, and constantly covering for Joe Manchin, for example, and doing endless misleading stories about inflation, Republicans in Georgia are doing this. That's it. This is a complete takeover to make sure the Democrats never win in Georgia under any circumstances. And if you think it's only going to be in Georgia, I got news for you. If it works there, why wouldn't it work in Michigan? Why wouldn't it work in Pennsylvania? Why wouldn't it work in Wisconsin? Why wouldn't it work in any of these other places? The answer is it will if you allow them to do it. This is why we need a voting rights bill. And once again, the Democrats are not pushing this, are not doing their job and doing everything they can to protect the vote. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.